Hi everyone, Janet McMorty here. Before we get to this week's episode, I want to tell you about a phenomenal podcast that is out there as well. The Firecracker Department is a podcast that dives into honest conversations with women and non-binary folks in the entertainment industry. The podcast has now spawned an international community of women and non-binary artists encouraging each other to take creative action. The podcast is hosted by award-winning actor, improviser, and comedian and friend Naomi Sinikas from Second City and Mr. D. In it, she talks to fellow actors, writers, and producers and gets the skinny on their struggles, successes, and everything in between. Deep, funny, real conversations that make you feel like you're having a drink with one of your best friends. Alcoholic or non-alcoholic, whatever's your poison. Guests include Mae Martin, actor-comedian from Feel Good and I Have Nothing, Joe Vanicola, the Emmy Award-winning actor from Street Legal, Being Erica and The Expanse, award-winning singer-songwriter Jan Arden, and Kay Cannon, the writer from New Girl and 30 Rock. Find the Firecracker Department wherever you get your podcasts and give them a follow. And now you can see the interviews on the Firecracker Department YouTube channel. Definitely check them out and let's support Canadian content, Canadian podcasts, and especially those by Canadian women and non-binary folks. Go over there and support them. Now, on with the show. Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Second Act Actors. I'm your host, Dr. Janet McMorty, and I'm still a medical doctor simultaneously trying to pursue a career in acting. My guest this week is L.A Sweeney. L.A. is a mom and actor. She had a myriad of different careers before she started pursuing acting, which you'll hear about in this episode. But I think, in my own humble opinion, she is a mom and actor, pursuing both simultaneously and, oh my goodness, doing a killer job at both of them. Now, if you've ever seen L.A. perform, and I've seen her perform in a monologue slam, she performed her monologue, you will never forget her. She has just a power and a presence and an aura around her. And you'll be able to witness this even through YouTube or through wherever you're listening to this. She is such a powerful force and an incredible, incredible actor. Please enjoy the phenomenal powerhouse, L.A. Sweeney. Walk normally. Just like as soon as they would say action, I'd be like, I don't know how to walk. I don't know how to walk. I've never done this before.
You can't. I had an audition where they were like, can you do the audition and then additionally send us a clip of you walking down a hallway? And I was like, yeah, no problem. I did not know how to do it. I probably did about 13 takes. That's a very random number, 13. It feels like it was bad luck. But yeah, I probably did about 13 takes and I watched them all back and I was like, is that how I walk? Do I walk like this? Do I walk like that or am I just really having a hard time walking on command? But here's the thing is we walk all the time. Even when we're acting, we walk, but it's not there. It's not on the paper that says you're now going to have to walk. And so you're not overly focused about it. But in that audition when we're like, we want a clip of you just walking. It became very apparent to me that you were going to be now judging my walking, and I just did not know how to do it. Yeah.
What a ridiculous job we have.
It's quite ridiculous. It is.
It is so ridiculous.
Yeah. Why do we do it? Why do we like it? I don't know.
I cannot wait to delve into it with you, and let's figure it out together.
Let's try to go into the subconscious and discover an answer for this.
I know. Okay, tell me your story. How did you get into this crazy masochistic business?
Oh my God. Well, good way to describe it for sure. Oh my God. Even one of those words, tell me your story. It's so intimidating, but I'll try to just chip away from the beginning and we'll just talk about it. But how I got into acting is I think I now know in retrospect that I've always wanted to be an actor. And I think it was that secret that I kept from myself that I knew from a very young age that I wanted to be an actor. When I was super young, I didn't know what to call it. When I got older and I identified what it was, I was terrified to say it out loud because, there's this perception from anybody who's not an actor, not in the business at all, that is this thing. It's like Hollywood, it's business. You make it or you break it. You can do it or you can't. And so I think it has that perception from the outside that it's like this dream thing that can only happen for some people, like it's this lottery thing. And as much as there is an aspect to the business that is that, those, top Hollywood performers, what was really liberating for me to understand was that there was an entire fleet of people out there known as working actors that were just making a living, that were working, that were, enjoying the craft. And once I kind of started discovering that it wasn't this big thing, you know what I mean, that was so impossible for everyone, that really helped me admit it to myself that like, hey, I like acting. I think I want to try to pursue acting because it became a little more, I guess, attainable and less scary to me at that point. So that's definitely, I guess, the point in which I was able to admit to myself that I wanted to pursue acting. So it did come later in life, right? It's something that actually I'm still quite new at. I've only really been on this trail actively, I'd say, for a couple years. That moment of really admitting to myself that acting something that I even want to pursue probably happened more so 5 years ago, and it was just before I had my first son. So before I had my first son, my husband actually, who's wonderful, he's a creative in his own respect, he really helped me identify that in myself and gave me a safe space to open up about it. And he actually signed me up for my first acting class. How sweet is he, right? I know. And so I only tipped my toes in and went to an acting class and was like, wow, this could be really fun. And then I got pregnant with my son. So I was like, okay, life is kind of doing something else right now. So that's kind of all I really dabbled in at that time. Had my son, and being a mom for the first time, that is like all encompassing. I mean, being a mom at any time is all encompassing, but really at that time was like brain could not even grasp another thought. So definitely acting kind of slipped to the back burner at that point. It was like the one class and done. Started up with my son, and then he was only a year and a half, 2 years old when the pandemic started. So just as I was kind of getting my footing again of being a person, because that first year, 2 years of like being a parent, you're just so entrenched in it. And it really, you really do have to wait till your kids kind of get a certain level of independence, at least for me, I found, before I could even start thinking about myself again. So I had sort of just started hitting that stride where I could start thinking about myself again. And then the pandemic hit, and it was kind of like, oh my God, another 6 months of sort of like, your entire outlook on life being kind of put on pause or changed or what have you. Um, but it was a blessing in disguise because in that quiet time of the pandemic, I was able to kind of remember this honest moment I'd had with myself and said, oh, right. I decided to give in to the creative in me. And so started back up with classes, of course, online at that time because we were height of the pandemic. And yeah, and then just like, I don't know, something switched in me. And I think it was a combination of being a new mom, the pandemic happening in the world, just being like, what do you have to lose at this point? And something just kicked me into overdrive. And I was like, I'm going to make this happen for myself. Like, I'm not going to dibble dabble and kind of go, oh, I'll take a class and I'll think about it and I'll see how it goes. And I was like, let's maybe not be passive about this. Let's maybe just take it by the horns and actively try to accomplish something here. And so I just was like online, I was like finding, like online monologue competitions and just like trying to like, and Googling, how does one become an actor? It's like headshots. Oh, I need headshots. Okay. Right. Like just bare bones kind of trying to like stitch it together for myself and figure it out. Cause all I knew was that it felt good doing it, but I knew nothing else about it. So I had to kind of try to learn all the other stuff and figure it out. And it went really, really well. I ended up like finding my agent through that actually. And that was incredible. And then funny enough, so right after I did all this work of like, we're going to get yourselves up, and headshots and this, that, and footage and find an agent, I got pregnant again. So I have 3 kids. I got pregnant with my twins the second time.
Oh my goodness.
I know. So then that was another moment of like, okay. It was really funny. I remember calling my agent when I found out that I was pregnant, and I felt like a teenager calling their dad to tell them they were pregnant. I have no idea why. It's right. It's what. It's like, why was that my feeling? I don't know, but I guess just because like I had waited so long for this thing, and then I felt like this person had given me a chance, and I felt like again, that outside perception of the industry thinking that now I was disposable because I was a pregnant woman, right? Which is not even just unique to acting.
Nope.
That's just a thing as a woman. But yeah, so I had these weird feelings, and then I called him and I was like, I'm pregnant, right? And I mean, his response was phenomenal. He was like, "Congratulations, you want to be pregnant, right?" I was like, "Yeah, yeah, no, 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 we're happy about it. We're really." And he's like, "Okay, that's amazing." And I was like, "Yeah, I just don't know, like, what this means. I don't know how active I'll be able to be." And he's like, "It means nothing. It means you do this now in your life, and however much of this you want to do, you decide and you tell me." And he's a big believer in the long haul, which I love so much about my age and have a great relationship with him. And so, he kind of said, just remember that first conversation we had where, you basically told me that you want to take this chance on yourself and you see this as something you can do long term. And he's like, I believe that for you as well. So acting will still be here when you're ready to come back to it. And that was like, what a gift, eh? What a gift to find and meet people like that in life who can just really meet where you're at mindset wise. You know what I mean? So that was really beautiful. So that was great. I got to experience, that pregnancy in that chapter of my life, not feeling stressed out, not feeling like it had come at the wrong time or like it was going to compromise this other new love I had found, right? And so yeah, then I was like another like year and change kind of just back into, mommy diaper mode and oh my God. And then I had my girls, and of course, my agent congratulated me. I sent him over the pictures, and then he started sending me auditions, and I was like, oh my God, I'm dripping breast milk. I'm not, what, And he was like, listen, it's just practice. It's if you want to, just keeping it on your table in case it's something, so you don't forget about it. And I was like, okay. And I did, like 6 weeks out the gate, I started kind of like doing tapes again, just for the heck of it, just for the muscle memory, just because, especially I think because I didn't have a solid footing in yet, I hadn't spent a lot of time even really doing this yet. I also, for myself, didn't want to let the fire burn out or the flame burn out before it even became a fire. You know what I mean? When you get those first ideas and you birth something, I think you really got to throw a lot of oxygen on the flames. There's an analogy there. That's how you build fires, right? I've been
Yeah.
camping before.
Yeah, camping. Girl Scouts.
Yeah. So I felt really compelled to definitely do what I could. So I did start trying to tape quite early on, and oh my God, those were fun days. I still have those. I have those tapes in a special folder. Those were fun days. But yeah, that was really important for me to do because it definitely put me where I am right now. So that really started me going, and I was auditioning a lot at that time, and I ended up like booking something, a few months postpartum, which was, now looking on it, like I'm so happy it happened. At the time, I remember it being a lot more stressful because I felt this pressure of like, I definitely have to do this because like I am aware that this is like so important and rare and it doesn't always happen. And like this is a really big, important reward. But I also was 4 months postpartum with twins and a 3 going on 4-year-old at home. And I was also moving cities. We were living in Ottawa at the time. We were coming back to Toronto for family related things that were going on. And it's just like I remember like being like, this is a lot, right? Like this is a lot going on right now. But always still feeling like I had to chew on it. I don't like letting a lot of things go. I guess sometimes maybe that's not been the greatest thing, but I'm learning how to sort of question myself and figure out if I don't want to let it go because for the sake of just not letting go because I feel like I never want to quit anything, or if I don't want to let it go because I feel like I really can do it. Like I really feel like I do have a capacity to take on more than maybe I would, initially give myself credit for. So I've learned to kind of listen to myself. And at the time I was like, I think I can do this. I can't do it perfect, but that's okay. But I think I can start making headway. And so I accepted the job and I went and I filmed this like indie film, like a full feature length. I was like 10 days being shuttled back and forth, breast milk, like, pumping all day. You're going to hear a lot about breast milk today.
Here for it.
Pumping, yeah, pumping all day long, storing it in the fridge, like in between takes. It was wild, really wild time. But again, one of those things that I'm really glad I did it because it proved to me that I can do it.
Mm.
I thought it was going to be impossible and then it wasn't. And I like that I was able to feel that level of confidence so early on because it's what's propelled me through the last 2 years of, the endless auditions um, and I'm a person of a mindset who always says, if you can do it once, you can do it a million times. And if one person says yes to you, there's many more out there that will say yes to you. You just have to wait. So I'm really fortunate that happened early on because I know and I can imagine that this business could get very discouraging, and especially if you are kind of on the trails and not really seeing a return. I'm just so grateful that I had that early win to let me know that there were wins out there for me and to keep me going, through the tough moments. Yeah.
I've there's so many things that you just said that just ignited more fire analogies. Fire's in my head. The one thing I want to go back, and this is one of the first things you said, was you said you gave in to the creativity. So prior to giving into the creativity, were you always a creative person? Do you think everyone is a creative person? Or what was life like before you realized, oh my gosh, it's almost like there's something missing?
Yeah, and thanks, Janet, because see, you're going to keep us on track here because as you can see, I will just go off and off and off and just
Love it.
float into the ether on a thought. And it's like,
It's
right, you did ask me about like kind of what was happening before.
it's exactly what I want. Keep doing it.
So I gave into the creativity. I have always been a creative person, but I have not found where like what table to sit at, if you will. And not to say that you have to plant yourself anywhere. I think as creatives, we can wear many hats and we can, contribute to the creative process from many different places. I went to school for graphic design, for example. Right. I did, fundamental arts in high school. Like I even took drama for like 1 year in high school before I stopped. I well, I have a hard time saying I am, but I am a poet, was for a brief time in my life, doing the poetry circuit and competing in slams and even winning some stuff, and actually have a chapbook of poetry somewhere out there in the world under a pseudonym. I don't know if I'll ever admit it, but yeah. So, creativity has definitely always been in me. But so when I say I don't know where I didn't know where to sit or where I landed, those creative outlets were always enjoyable, but nothing ever felt sustainable. Like nothing ever felt like acting does. Nothing ever felt like, yeah, I really want to do this. I kind of just felt like I was dabbling. It was like, I don't know, maybe I can kind of do that, right? Yeah, I'm doing it a bit. No interest, did not want to plug into it, right? So acting is the first creative endeavor outlet that I found that like is lighting me on fire. Like, I'm feeling that obsessive kind of like, I just want to know more. I want to do more, right? And I've never felt that way about the other things that I've done creatively. Um, to your other question, while I try to like control my brain here, to your other question of like, do I think everyone is creative? I do. I think that there's creativity in absolutely everything. I think the issue is that I don't think that we prioritize cultivating creativity enough, like as a society in the school system, and not to condemn any one thing. It's just, it's not something that we prioritize learning. I don't think, because I really do think it's ingrained in everything. And I think a lot of times we kind of see it as a separate thing. It's like, oh, the creative arts or the academic arts. And I don't really think that they're entirely separate, right? Like problem solving is creativity in my mind in a way, right? So I think there's a long way that we can go as, a society to really better understand the power of creativity and all the places that it really can live in our world and how we can better cultivate that from an early and young age, because it's such a hard thing to understand. Like here I am at my life right now, even just starting to understand how to even be creative in this thing that feels so good to me, right? That's my thing, is like how do I like authentically kind of sit into my artist, right? And it's like, why don't I already have a tool for knowing how to do that? Right. And as a mother now with kids, like that's something that I'm trying my best to prioritize. Again, I'm trying my best to do it without tools already designed for me. Like I didn't grow up knowing how to even recognize or cultivate my own creativity. So I'm now trying to like build that for them and design it for them and be like, how do I help them see creativity in every area of their life, and help them just develop it, right?
Do you think that's a generational thing? Because I'm empathizing with exactly what you said, and I remember being I have now, and this is a little bit about my story. I have now like a day off that I've
Okay.
said this is my day in the week that I'm going to have off for the first time since I've been like 4. And I remember my therapist being like, "So what do you like to do?" And I was like, I don't think I actually know this, because exactly what you were saying, I don't know what I enjoy creatively because it was never instilled in me. And I don't know if instill is the right word, through no fault of anyone's growing up. But like, do you think it's a generational thing? Like our parents, I know they had to deal with a lot of traumas. Their parents, our grandparents had to deal with a lot of stuff. Like, why is that so many of us now at kind of this midpoint in our lives are going, we are missing creativity?
I think you absolutely are onto something there. I don't know that I have the answer, but in the moment, just, kind of theorizing on why it could be, to kind of combine our points, like the fact that creativity has not been recognized to be the powerful tool that it can be, I think is why it's more so been looked like an extra or an other or a luxury. So speaking of generationally, yeah, our parents had a lot to deal with and survive, whereas the arts and creativity having been looked at as something that was a luxury, it absolutely wouldn't have been on the priority list. And to my point of like, I think we need to change our mindset of how we look at creativity, because I think there's a lot that creativity can help in those survival times. So even like for our parents' generation, whereas like if we describe them as being in more of a survival mode, maybe than we have to be now, I think creativity is a pillar that could have helped them in some way. I don't exactly know how, but just knowing the power of creativity that I'm experiencing, there's no way that I could call it non-essential, right? Like I think it is so essential. I'm discovering how essential it is. And so if that were something that were taught to the generation before us, right, or the generations or however long back, if they had the chance to discover it for the skill that it can be, it might be different. But because it was categorized as like an extra, a luxury, and other, I mean, why is it that so many of our generation's parents are like, don't go into the arts, go into, this, right? It's because, again, that divide of what it was looked at, right? And how it's valued in our society or not valued. So I like that that's changing. I hope that, it's not just because, okay, I call it a luxury, even though we're still living scarcely in other ways. But I think you get what I mean. Like in this first world of it still being treated that way. I hope that this generation, the shift of maybe paying attention to the arts and creativity more, like there will be a long-lasting way to incorporate it into our value system and how we appreciate it and the ways that we see that it can further us as a people. And a big thing, a really big thing, empathy. Like there's so much in the creative process that requires empathy, and it's not always an obvious way. You say as an actor, obviously you have to be empathetic, right? It's one of the cornerstones. Like you have to be empathetic. You have to understand how to empathize with a character to even, be able to begin to portray it, right? But even in a lot of other creative things, you have to have empathy to be able to understand like what message are you trying to deliver here. You can't decide a message without empathizing with something from some viewpoint. You know what I mean? So even just building the muscle of empathy, like creativity can help with that. And you'd be wild crazy to think that empathy wouldn't improve our world if we all had more empathetic people, right? So I see it as essential for sure.
Yeah, and I think I 100% agree with you. And I think about when I look at what gets transferred from generation to generation to generation, like what is a permanence in
Yeah.
our world, and it's story and art. And I mean,
Yeah.
of course, technology and science and blah, blah, but like storytelling in a myriad of shapes and forms, from like around the campfire, caveman, all the way up till now. Like, this is how, like, exactly what you're saying, that's how you build empathy, right? Because how else are we supposed to learn about everyone else? We have to hear their stories. But we do such a disservice to us as a human species when we don't value the storytellers. Even though
Yes.
we look back and we see, like, what made the generation defined, storytellers.
Yeah, and it's that thing of like never forget where you came from. You know what I mean? Like that's an important thing, and it's almost like is that what we're doing? Because yes, technology and science and all that, but that's new age stuff. You know what I mean? So
Yes.
to your point, like storytelling um, and art has been around since the dawn of time, right? And it got us here. It has to be important. It has to have been of value. It got us here. So definitely, yeah, I'm an advocate of that as well. Like maybe like let's not forget where we came from. Let's look back and really pay attention to why that is so valuable. And if we can admit that it is so valuable, let's put some resources into cultivating it.
Mm-hmm.
Resources into properly cultivating it and helping our next generations to be able to wield it and utilize it in a way that's going to benefit them and the longevity of us as a people, right?
Totally.
Children are the
Yeah.
revolution. That's gonna be a different conversation, but I always say that. Whenever people are like, well, oh, all these problems, there's so much going on in the world, what are we gonna do about it, and blah 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 blah, and I'm just like, children. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to sound hopeless. I don't want to sound like I'm hopeless for everybody and everything that already exists. I just like I like efficiency, and I appreciate like, what is the way that we can get this done with the most impact with the least amount of work. Not to say I'm afraid of work, but do you know what I mean? Like efficiency, right? And for me, I just see it in children. Like it's if you start them right, if you protect them from things going wrong, to a catastrophic level, that is how you fix it. Like this idea of like trying to put everything into correcting what has already gone, awry. It doesn't yeah, it doesn't click in for me as
Hmm.
strongly as the idea of just like let's let the new generation that's coming in do it right. That doesn't mean don't pay
Mm-hmm.
any attention to what's going on right now, but definitely the priority and the bulk of the attention should be put on preventing the mistakes from being repeated rather than trying
Yes.
to unroot the mistakes now, because there is that thing of like you can't teach an old dog new tricks. Like to a
Mm-hmm.
certain point that is true, right?
Yeah.
But that's a whole
Yeah.
other conversation, but yeah.
My background being in medicine, I think about like that's how public health works, right? Like you get this whole community of people who are sick. You can either throw medication at them to treat the symptoms, or from say they're sick from like the water they're drinking. You
Yeah.
throw a bunch of medication at them to make them feel better, or what you do is you look at the water supply and say, why is this making everyone sick?
Yeah,
Right? You
yeah,
look at the new stuff, the new
yeah,
things, right? Like don't just band-aid solution old things, right? Look at
yeah,
the root cause and how can we make that better? Yeah, I
completely. And that can actually, on that thought, I'm like, I just found a segue back into acting, which is like to speak of acting that way, not to say it feels great every time because I'm a human who has an ego as well, one that I'm definitely every single day trying to keep in check and not feed, but it still exists there as a human. And so when I'm tackling my work as an actor and as an artist, and obviously things are not going perfect, they're not great. I'm thinking, in my head I envision how I can do this thing, and then it's not happening the way that I envision it. And you can easily get caught up. I can easily get caught up in like trying to just beat that thing. Like, no, it can get there. It can get there. I know it can because I can feel it in my head and I know it's already whatever. But it's like, but it's not getting there. So there's obviously something that needs to shift, and maybe your energy would be better put into kind of like taking a step back and being like, let's not to say abandon this, but like almost like do it for the next one. Like let's pay attention to the process, on the next one and see how we can improve that and maybe identify where the issue was there instead of being stuck here for endless amounts of hours, beating yourself up about why this one isn't at the level you want it to be. And it's actually doing you a disservice because now you're chipping away at your confidence. You're forgetting, probably a bunch of the pillars that you're supposed to be, relying on to even give you that performance. And so I definitely practice that, giving myself grace a lot of just like being like process, process, process. It's about the process. And so this tape, this performance, this whatever is at the level it's going to be at right now because that's the level that my artistry is at. And I'm not going to suddenly improve my artistry by leaps and bounds by like banging my head against the wall over this tape for hours on end throughout the night. I'm going to accept that this is where my artistry is at. And now I'm going to go back to process and try to, work the muscles and build the skills in the areas that's going to increase my skill so that the next tape, that's what I'm always striving to see is like, can the next tape be better than the last? Have I improved on my process? Did I spend time in between to try to figure out something else I could be doing as an artist? Something, more like how do I close that gap, if you will, between the skill level I believe I am at or can be at and what I'm actually seeing occurring?
Yes.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Did that segue even make sense? I don't know. I got us back on
Abs-
track with acting.
It absolutely did, and I think that's such an important thing about artistry in general. And I think it's when you have frustrating days, I know. Let me know if you ever feel like this. I know I can sometimes feel like everything that I've learned, and now I'm in a frustrating day. It feels like it's just gone. Like, what have I worked for? Like, what have I been doing?
Yeah.
But it's that mindset shift of like, yeah, that's what human being is, of course. But also on the days when you're feeling like you have lost all the training you've had, it's the realization that like everything in your life leading up till now doesn't just go away in a puff of smoke. It's
Right.
there. It's always there. And the
Right.
new thing that you're doing right now, even though it feels like you're taking a backtrack, is
Yeah.
actually elevating and adding on to what you've already had. Because you can't go back in time. That literally will not happen. It's just adding and elevating, even though it doesn't feel like it.
Oh, 1000% agree. And I have never, so spirituality. You're like, how did that come of this? But I've always, had a certain sense of my own understanding of spirituality and my own relationship with it. But through acting, like I really have found myself, it's come up a lot more and I've been focused a lot more on what I even think spirituality is and my, relationship with it because acting takes so much faith. And in kind of like feeling how much faith I've had to actually be sitting in to even be acting, it's causing me to, kind of like think of that other piece, which is the spirituality. But all that you just said of like everything that it's taken for you to become who you are today and everything you, although even the work, the process work you've done and script analysis, et cetera, blah, 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 to get you to that point where you're now, action and go, it doesn't go away, but you're not acting on it at the moment. You don't have it, in the front of your mind going, right, in my script analysis, I'm supposed to be blah, blah, blah. That's in your head. And you know how terribly that goes when we try to act from that place. So you really do got to forget it and trust it'll be. And there's the big moment of faith that I've like had to be putting myself in regularly since, embarking on this journey of acting that has felt extremely uncomfortable, but then in some moments extremely like exhilarating, because it's like it's so uncomfortable to be like, but how am I going to do it if I'm not what like I just leave it all there and do what? And it's this thing of what do you mean do what? It's like do all those things and then forget it. I'm like, what? Like that's like what do you mean? I don't understand. But then when it happens, when you get to that place, that magical place where you have like prepared and you have actually let your mind relax and essentially forget it, and you find yourself actually getting lost in that moment that, what they call you're locked in, right? You're dropped in. When you actually experience that, for me, that thrill has been the thing that I am like now, almost like addicted to. Like it's like that chasing that high, it's like, wow, like, oh my God, wow. Like life is wonderful. Living real life is absolutely wonderful. And I don't know how they combine, but this other thing of like living life in a moment of manufacture, right? Because it's like you manufactured this moment because it's acting, but then real life crept in and it became a real moment. Oh my God. oh my God, right? So that's where I'm at with it right now.
Well, it's 100% addicting. And I think the reason why I think I'm trying to, the reason why it feels so good for me, I wonder, is if it because I'm not speaking English right now. I think there's a feeling of safety in the manufactured aspect of it. So you can feel safe to just like be the real human. Where I do think, yeah, like real life is beautiful, but we do edit ourselves. But there's just something so awesome of being in this like safe manufactured environment and being able to just be the real human we kind of always wanted to be. And that safety allows for that comfort.
Yeah, that's 100% what it is. And that's exactly it. It's just like, and that's where the fun kicks in because, like, I'm not, even though I'm in a scene where I'm about to be murdered, my real life is not at threat here, right? So like all those same adrenaline feelings that would fire off if you were in that real life situation now can be felt quite joyously. So, yay, you're murdering me because it's not real. It's not real, right? It's like I'm going to get to explore all of these human things and then come back to my place of, as you said, safety, And I think we think that even in our real life as we're going through, and, sometimes you get those thoughts of like, oh, what have I missed out on? Or what could I be doing that I'm not doing? Or this is going to sound, this is one of those moments you're going to have to edit out because it's going to sound bad. But even when you think of like people having affairs, it's like, where are you going with this, LA? When you think about it, I mean, I don't know. I just imagine that these people maybe like they're feeling like there's something else, like this other timeline of life that I almost want to explore, but then I can't because it's compromising this timeline or something. And acting is almost that thing where you can like explore every timeline without compromise or threat or jeopardy to your real life, right?
So again, personal experience, I was in a play last year and I had my first ever experience working with an intimacy director. Because
they're wonderful.
They're wonderful.
I've had the experience as well. They're wonderful. We should start a club advocating for intimacy coordinators. Okay.
I'm having one on my show. I'm very excited.
Yay.
But it's the idea of, and I had a friend say this to me, and she's not an actor, and of course, I'd never thought about this. She's like, "Oh my God," because I had to make out with this 21-year-old Brazilian guy who was playing my boyfriend.
Lovely.
Like, oh my God, it's like you get to like cheat on your partner with no repercussions, and I was like. Interesting,
but like hold my cringe.
I know, right? And then of course I'm like, but it is an interesting thing, and we can extrapolate that to like you can play an astronaut, you can play. I never get to be an astronaut in my life, and I get to be in that timeline, right?
Yeah.
But there is that safety and that safety piece where you can explore. And I mean, I know this is where actors get into like naughty trouble when they like fall in love with their co-stars and stuff like that because they probably didn't have an intimacy coordinator working.
Ding, 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 ding.
They didn't have a closure practice.
Yes.
But
another podcast.
Right. As another question, has there been anything that has surprised you about the entertainment industry?
Surprised me, yeah. Honestly, I guess probably currently, I think I've still got a lot of surprises to encounter later on. Like I said, I'm still early into the venture, but so far it's been not that it should come as a surprise, but okay, here's what it is. I'm like, now I found my answer. It's been that acting isn't the same for all actors. That's been surprising to me as we're kind of talking about, we were just talking about like that thrill of kind of, that being dropped into that place where it's like you're just lost in it and nothing else, is going on or whatever. And I think hearing from my peers that I've gotten to talk with so far, there's a similar feeling that many of them do have. But I've also encountered some peers that it's a little bit more, I don't know the right word is to say, like if it's a little more mechanical or technical, but that they kind of approach acting in a different way where it doesn't have to be this like real thing that they're necessarily feeling or doing, and that they are more concerned with or okay with it being, I don't want to say a copy of, because I definitely don't want this to come across as though I'm making their acting sound like it is, not as good or inferior. It's just different. So in having conversation with some peers, I've discovered that there's a different way that everybody approaches acting and feels about acting, and most importantly, what it feels like for them when they're acting. Right. And that's a hard thing to even understand, because it's like to even explain these things. But I've had a lot of in-depth conversations because I'm at that point where I'm just so curious about it and I'm trying to learn. And in picking some peers' brains and hearing from them, I'm kind of go, oh, like there's some people that I hear from that I go, yeah, that's, oh my God, that's how it feels for me too. That's like whatever, that's what I love about it. And then I've had some interesting conversations where I go, oh, that's, I can't relate to that. That's actually not at all how I experience it, and very different. And I mean, I guess that shouldn't be a surprise, because that is creativity. It's going to be different for everybody. But I think that's been a surprise, maybe because it's been such a precious and exciting part of my exploration of acting, that I've been so in love with that way that I look at it and that way that I feel about it, that maybe that's what's led it to be surprising when I hear from peers that it isn't that way for that. I kind of go, what do you like about it then? Right. So it's definitely, I don't want it to sound judgmental at all. It's definitely been surprising. And being in that, sort of learning open space, I absolutely make a strong point to withhold judgment from almost everything right now as I explore. That's just good practice in life, but particularly right now as I'm feeling my way through, like it's a massive thing that I always go, do not judge. Like as those feelings creep up in you, because we're humans and almost we sometimes want to react with judgment. Like I have this big thing in my brain right now where like do not judge. And then I'm like, right, be open. And I'm like, oh, I don't say. So, so yeah, that's been surprising that acting doesn't feel the same for everyone.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Really interesting. And it's interesting because I've had conversations with people who went through formal theater training, like formal film acting. They got the degree, 4-year intensive program. And hearing from them about their process and how it feels is very different than how I feel. And I know I'm making a broad generalization about theater school graduates, but like, because there was so much academia involved in the process, which can hinder, I think it would hinder me, to be honest, even though I come from a long academic science career. But I think, I know it works well for some people, but I think it would be, I don't know, I think it would be too constricting, because I'd be trying to find the correct way to do the thing that the instructor told me so I could get my degree in the thing.
Right. Yeah. And I guess that's part of the, like, learning it and then forgetting it. I also do believe that you have to almost like know the rules in order to forget the rules, right? Like I also am learning in acting that it's not just this like get up and act. It's not just this like, oh, what is it? Yes, I'm afraid of that person because whatever. Okay, well, I've been afraid before, so let me just whatever, right? There's an aspect of that in acting for sure, and that's the like, that instinctual part of, following your instinct and stuff. But I'm seeing a lot of the power in those structures and in the technical learning pieces and stuff like that. But yeah, I guess it just depends on how much you prioritize one or the other. And I think just discovering your balance of, knowing how much of that to incorporate and then how much of your own instinct and artistry to kind of like put on it and direct it, right? I'm finding a lot of confidence though in being quite prepared with doing the work. When I first started acting, I was like, even the very first acting class I went into, I got high praise quickly, right? People were like, "Oh my God, you're natural, right?" And I was like, "Oh, okay. Well, I guess I just know how to act then." and then stepping back into it in the way that I explained to you that I did years later, and and really starting to actually learn about like how you dissect a story, how you dissect a character, how you build a character, what are those things that you do in the moment to whatever, right? And being like, oh, there's so much stuff. Oh my God, what? Oh, and then being like, oh, I don't know how to act at all and feeling completely inadequate in it. And now I think I'm just honestly getting to a point where I'm kind of starting to stitch the two together and being like, okay, understanding how to do this thing, because there is definitely a teachable skill, understanding how to do this thing and preparing through that, through those teachings and those understandings gives me a really confident backbone to then go and, sort of like give into my instincts and improvise and, as they say, let it all go, right? So that's how I'm finding my way into marrying the two of just like, I can do the thing, but I learn how to do the thing.
Well, I think there's definitely the whole idea of the allure of the promising beginner, right? When you start out and everyone's saying, "Yeah, you're the natural," and I find I know, right? And I find like as people who are like high achievers in this world, and I'm putting myself in there and you in there as well too. When there comes to like a point when you can't say that you're a beginner anymore and people won't go, "Oh, that's so cute. You're doing so good." There's like the shift that needs to happen where you either quit the thing or you need to do that little bit more work to get over the hump where you're no longer the promising beginner. Now you're the working actor.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah,
Now you
totally.
just do the thing.
Yes, you need to be now you want to be good at the thing. And when I heard that comment initially, it made me feel good. But when I knew nothing about acting and I was like, oh, I'm natural. Okay, great. Now knowing so much more and having trained and learning the skill for what it is, now I hate that comment. Like, I have friends and family who are not at all acquainted with the business or anything like that, who will throw those comments of like, "Oh, of course you're doing good. You would be doing good. We always knew you could be an actor, blah, 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 blah." And now I have to fight when I hear those comments to not react, because what it brings up in me, knowing how much work this actually is, what it brings up in me is I want to be recognized for the work, right? This is not a natural thing that I'm doing right now. I'm not just, "Oh, you're just so good at it." No, like I'm staying up late at night. I'm learning things. I'm putting myself through a lot of uncomfortable, painful things. My brain is twisting sideways trying to figure it out. I'm doing so much to better the craft. Like there's a real skill that I'm building here. So now those comments of like, "Oh, you're just so natural," as particularly from people who don't know what it is that's happening, irk me. There's the word irk. They irk me, but I have to, again, I just go to that place where I go, well, it's that thing. They just don't know, right? They're not saying it to undermine you or to diminish the work you're doing it. They're just saying because that's how it looks to them, right? And the weird part about it is that's how you want it to look. You want it to look natural and effortless and whatever, right? But then at the same time, I'm going, but also recognize how much hard work I've done to make it look effortless. It's like, just take the win. A win is a win. If you're doing it, it looks effortless. You know what you've put into it. Your industry peeps know what you put into it, and just let it be.
So do you have any advice for people who are looking at getting into acting, either after a career, after building a family?
Yeah, I have so much advice, Janet. I have like so much advice that usually people are just like, just stop telling us advice. I'm kidding, actually. I've always actually not wanted to tell anybody ever what to do about anything. I was like, I don't know, you do it, decide for yourself. But just speaking from my own perspective, so I don't even think I told you. I've worn many hats before acting, right? We talked about so many things. What did you do before this? What was your first act? Just being out there in the world, not knowing what I was doing. But I've done everything from like corporate management to administration to tour guiding. I traveled around the world as a tour guide. Yeah, all these really crazy things, but they were all non-consequential because they were never what I wanted to do. I would say for anyone who wants to switch, that I think first you should just kind of like, I think you have to have that conversation with yourself, specifically acting. So, specifically, if you want to get into acting, from what I've experienced so far, I think you should have a really real conversation with yourself to better understand what the acting world is. Like, do you just want to do it as a hobby and you just want to go to classes sometimes and whatever, and that's fine. Like, I think you need to help define for yourself maybe what direction you want to take it in. This might help you. I'm a big person of, I never want to get my I never want to let my hopes get kind of higher than what I think I can attain or achieve, and I really like to assess things first and kind of see like, do I feel like I could like tackle this, right? So from my experience, my advice would be to just like, don't make it be a knee-jerk thing. Like, sit down and think about how it feels. Does it feel really important to you? And if you don't know, you could hop into an acting class just to kind of get an idea of like, do I even like this thing that I think might be cool, right? And then if you do and you're like, I want to do this and I want to like jump ship and switch careers and like dig in like I'm doing, I think just acquainting yourself with the reality of what it will take, like have a conversation with actors who are doing it. When you go to that class and there's other actors in there that are maybe working actors, maybe talk to them about their journey and what it's taken, because there is a lot of sacrifice, right? I'm not even down the trail far enough. I have not even encountered all the sacrifice that I know I'm going to have to put in, and already it's a thing where I'm like, but I had a big conversation with myself before I did this, and I said to myself, if I had to do 500 auditions before someone said yes to me, would it be worth it? And I came up with the answer of yes. I said, if I, were just acting in, friends' films or in class or whatever, like if it didn't become that thing where I got that career recognition, is it still something I want to do? And the answer was yes. You know what I mean? So now I'm still a person living in the world who has bills to pay and a family to support and all that stuff. So I'm definitely trying to go about in a way where I can support myself off of this, right? But I had to agree to do it with the possibility that none of that other stuff would happen. For me, that's what it took for me to have the boldness to do it. And there was so much else as well. Like, I told you I'm a mom, and I didn't want to live with regret, but more important than me not living with regret, I didn't want to role model for my kids that it was okay to sit around living with an idea of something you want to do. Like, I thought this could be a good way to show them that, like, it's not too late, like mommy didn't have it all figured out. And then one day I kind of figured it out and I went for it. And I did that thing. And it's okay to switch things. It's okay to change your mind. It's okay for, as much as I'm in love with acting right now, and I don't think that will ever change, if that changed in 5 years or 10 years, like, I'm going to want to do the same thing that I did now, to be brave enough with myself to say, okay, and now I'm doing this thing, right? So I want to role model for my kids, like, to have that pliability as a person, and that bravery. So that's another big motivating factor of why I'm doing what I'm doing. And all that stuff really is grounding me. It's propelling me. It's like it's about so much more than acting as well. Like, the acting is wonderful. Me pursuing the acting is about so much more. So if that's advice to someone, I think that's advice to someone. Just be honest with yourself, and then be bold and be brave, because one life, right?
Something that you said right at the beginning when you were talking about your story that I hear quite often, like you were talking about, having the chat with your agent when you were nervous to tell him that you were pregnant. And I think there's a big underlying, I say the word fear, and I don't know if it's actual fear, but for those of us coming into it later on in life, a fear that we have to catch up, and once momentum starts, we can't stop because then it's going to go away. Like, the train is going, you better cling on for dear life, because if you fall off, it's just going to go without you. And did you ever feel that way during that time in your life? And then I have a kind of a second thing, sorry to interrupt you, because the thing you talked about, growing and hustling and kind of pushing and stuff like that with a life that you lead, I worry sometimes that we kind of emphasize that, like, hustle so much, especially as women as we get older, that it makes us forget, like, to be present, because we're constantly thinking of, like, the train.
Yes, for sure. So, like, your first question about missing the train, absolutely. I feel that. I definitely feel that, of like, I have to catch up. I have to catch up, right? How am I ever going to make it if I don't make up for all the time that I wasn't doing this? And I don't know exactly how you combat that. I think it's just par for the course that you're going to feel that way. I think it's just important I really believe in, like, talking back to myself. I really believe in, like, having two people in my head talking. So there's the voice of, like, the fear and the preconditioning and the everything that's already there. And then there's my voice of choice, which is like, the thing of, like, what I ideally want to strive for. Like, I don't want that voice to win. I don't want the voice who says this idea that, like, oh, I have to chase the train and I've got to catch up. I don't want that voice to win, but it's there. I have to accept that it's there, right? So instead of trying to deny that it's there, I just talk back to it. I just try to make a louder voice that says, no, there's no train to catch because the train is me. I am the train, and I will take a break when I feel like taking a break. I will stop. I'll do a pit stop. I'll switch tracks. I am the train. That's what the competing voice says. You are the
I
train.
love that.
Yeah. So I definitely, it's just practice, right? I do that every day. I mean, I hope I'm practicing in hopes that someday the other voice will shut up, but maybe that's life and it won't. And it's just about having that in place where you have that talk back voice. And then, to your second point, my personal feelings, and I think this is why you have to make everything personal. I don't think, as much as we can take in advice from other people and we can hear other people's stories, I think all those stories and that advice and everything, that information is just, we can use it to kind of like better find our own voice, but it's not going to be the same for everyone. So even that, like, that story of like, oh, the hustling, and could that be good or could that be bad? I've heard all of it. I've heard the people are like, grind till you die and hustle every day. And then I've heard the other people are like, no, be kind to yourself and hustling is actually very dangerous for you. And I have to take all that in, and then I have to run it through LA's system of, again, everything that I've become up until this point, and I have to accept how I currently operate as well, and I have to not cheat myself, and I have to know what decisions to make that will be best for my system and how I operate. And I know two things about myself, only two, no, but I know two important things in relation to that. And one is that I am an overachiever for sure. I am a person who can barely sit down and relax because I always feel like there's got to be something else that I can be doing for sure. So that's something that I know that I have to keep in check for myself. I also know that if I don't put onus on myself and if I don't discipline myself and give myself that like deadline or say like this is why this is important, that I will quickly trick myself into feeling like it's not important as a scapegoat to not do it. So I know those things about myself, and so I kind of have to fall in the middle of that argument and sort of say to myself like, I know I'm not going to push myself to hustle till I die. Like I have to give myself rest sometimes to keep in check that overachiever. But I also know that I can't be complacent and just say, oh, it'll come as it goes, because then I'm not putting into check the part of me that wants to run away from responsibility, the part of me that wants to, almost like pretend like it's not important so that I can give up on myself, right? So yeah, so I have to put it somewhere in the middle there. And the way I've kind of done that, again, it's that talk back voice. I have a conversation with myself every day. Like I made a commitment to myself, for example, where I said, I am never going to not send in a tape. Like every tape request I ever get, I am going to give that, right? And I have not given in every tape. So there's been a few that I've declined on, but those moments that came up where I was like every single tape, and then there became a moment where I was like, ooh, no, doesn't feel right. And then I just had to have that conversation with myself where I was like, okay, this is not about you giving up on yourself. You're not getting lazy. That's not why. There are real reasons and legitimate factors as to why this is actually not a good idea for you to give in this tape. You know what I mean? Like, or you should decline this. You should pass on this. And that's the me giving myself grace and not hustling till I die. So that's where I've had to like mediate and fall in the middle. And I have to have that conversation with myself at every single time that it comes up. And I just have to have that almost like that internal pro and con list and self assess. But it's become less of a pro and con list and more of a gut. I'm starting to hear my gut more. I had no idea what my gut sounded like, and I'm starting to give it space to speak to me. And so it's becoming a lot easier to make those decisions.
Do you have any favorite on-set moments or even in class moments?
In class, a favorite moment of mine is literally just the energy that I get to pull from being around my peers. Like to me, it's felt like the height of enjoyment for doing the thing over being on set, over being in my room, trying to tape the tapes. It's something about, I guess, being in that space with other people that automatically for me raises the stakes. And then specifically being around peers that, get it. Like everybody gets what it is that I'm, trying to take on, and they are also trying to take that on. And for me, it's just the most free that I feel when I'm doing it. And I'm still working on like, how do I get to the space where I can recreate what I feel and do in class while on set, while doing my tapes. Like for me, that's the gap I'm trying to close right now. I feel like the quality of my work, and I shouldn't even say the quality, but how far along I am with process is a lot further when I'm in class than I'm currently able to find when I'm taping or when I'm on set, right? I'm still doing good on set and on tape. I'm not trying to say I'm terrible, but it's just it feels like it's like in class I'm like, whoa, like when I do stuff in class I'm like Somebody come see that. Somebody come judge that because Oscar.
Yes, yes.
So that's my favorite thing about being in class. And then a funny thing on set or favorite I don't know if it's a favorite thing, but I can't stop. I'm not far away from it yet enough to stop finding it hilarious how many times I was on set and pumping breast milk. That's still so recent in my in my past that it's still just the funniest thing to me because like it's a whole other operation outside of the operation of just surviving set. There's like you're doing so many things like you're trying to act and then you're trying to survive set, right? And then you're trying to act, survive set and like somehow like extract nutrients from your body.
Keep little humans alive.
I've been walked in on so many times, which I don't mind. I'm not shy at all about that. I'm like, breast pumping advocate. I would do it right there on set if they let me. If nobody else felt uncomfortable, I'd like just put the pump on. We're good to go. But yeah, it's just remarkably funny, especially when someone walks in or whatever, and they're like, "I'm so sorry," and I'm like, "No, it's fine. It's cool. It's cool, man. Just source of life. No big deal." But yeah, those moments, I have so many of them in my head, and those have been the funniest. It's a thing unique to breast pumping mothers, but it's been good.
Well, and I think it's one of those things where you're going to look back and be like, how was that my life at this point in my life?
I know.
Everything is
Yeah.
so bizarre and ridiculous.
Yeah, it's great. It's really great. I also got to, because again, I'm still, this is just a side thought now, but I'm, a couple years in, so I'm only now getting to the point where I'm even getting to see projects because, it takes them so long to turn around, right? So I just got to see one of the first projects I shot and I was like, whoa, I was like, hey, false advertising, man, because I was a breast pumping mama at that time. And, the girls were a little endowed, I'll say. So I was like, I was like trying to stitch together a reel, and I'm like, casting might be a little confused when they see me now. The situation has changed. I don't know, fun facts.
Well, with that being said, do you have anything that you're looking forward to coming up this year?
Okay, so here's the other thing that I'm like, I was thinking about that before. I'm like, Janet's going to ask me that. I'm like, I have no idea how to answer because speaking of that thing of projects taking a while to come around, and I never know when is the okay time for me to talk about them or not, right? Like mum's the word until, because I don't want to say anything I'm not supposed to say. There is a film that I did. I definitely can mention that because it's like, it's been out in the US already. It's like coming to Canada. It's called Last Resort. It's an indie film I did. I am particularly proud only because this is the first thing I shot 4 months postpartum. And so for me, I'm like, I just see the workhorse that I was. Like
Yes.
performance aside, everything else aside, I just know the workhorse I was. So I'm excited about that. I also got to lead an MOW back in the fall, which was like incredible. Yeah, so much fun. So I don't know if I'm allowed to say much more about that, but that will definitely be out this year. If anyone listening ends up following me, you'll end up hearing about and seeing those things promoted as they come out. But so that's great. So I'm gonna have like 2 films out this year where I was like a lead and a supporting in. So that's really great, big milestones, I think, for me. I'm also, this I can definitely talk about. I'm in a writer's room right now developing a play for Fringe, the Toronto Fringe Festival.
Yes.
So me and kind of like the artist collective group that I'm a part of, we're doing that right now. We're like in the throes of it, and we'll be putting that on this summer at Fringe. I think Fringe is in early July, like 5th to 16th. So that's something, again, like follow me so you can get the plug on that. But you'll be able to see I'm participating in the writing of it / like co-producing it, and definitely will be performing in it. So that's like a whole new territory for me. That's like right now just like lighting my fire because it's just something ongoing that I get to plug myself into.
So exciting. It's so exciting. Yeah. And I definitely, we'll put all the links and stuff like that in the show notes.
For sure.
Do you have any final words of wisdom or advice?
Oh man. Just honestly, I will just go back to what it is that's like leading me right now, which is make the most of your life. I know that sounds really like everybody says that and whatever, but really like every single day, like I put a lot of pressure on myself. Every day when I wake up, I'm kind of like, how can this day feel good? Like I just want it to feel good. Like, and you did say final advice, so I don't want to get into another story, but just as a small supporting back piece to it, I lived a long time of my life with health issues that I really didn't even think I'd be here today. So I think there's something ingrained in me that just like I have this really intense like thirst for just living. And I think we all do, but maybe it's just not always on the forefront of our mind. And maybe my health issues helped it be something that's more on my mind regularly. But for just anybody, I would just say, even if there's not that thing that every day makes you presently think about how powerful life is, like you can put yourself in that place. You can just think about it in the morning. You can meditate. You can do whatever it is that you do to just recognize life for the value that it is. Like, don't be too cool for school. It really is powerful. It's amazing. It's absolutely incredible that you're here. So whatever it is that's going to make that feel better for you, that's going to make it feel like it is on fire the way that it should be, do it. Find it, do it, and mess it up. I wanted to curse there, but I was like, mess it up. You know what I mean? Insert bleep word, right? Do the damn thing.
Do the damn thing. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. And thank you, L.A., for being my guest this week. Everyone, just a little behind the scenes hilariousness that happened. When I stopped recording, when I clicked the stop button on the recording, I just blurted out, I think I'm in love with you, to L.A. That is how much I was just so engrossed in our conversation, just obsessed with what she had to say and our connection. Oh my gosh, I hope you felt that too. She is absolutely incredible, isn't she? L.A., thank you so much for taking the time to share your story. I love the connection this podcast has made, the friendship that we now have. I so appreciate you. Oh, and I can't wait to see what 2024 brings for you, girl. Oh, you're killing it already. I hope you will all tune in next week for another episode of Second Act Actors. Bye.